This is the Variety Sports Network, created for the fans, by the fans. Now to your host of tonight's show.
We are live, everybody. Welcome to Saturday Showdown. Here today with your host, Doug, and with me, guys, the CEO and creator of VSN, Brandon, and our resident Arkansas fan, the leader of the Woo Pig Weekly, Caleb. How you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing good. It's glad to get this thing going. It's gonna be fun. I can't wait to get this one really off the ground and moving forward. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Caleb, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing pretty good. Just like Brandon, excited to get this thing started. Ready to go. Football's right around the corner, and can't wait to get started.
Before we really get into the meat and potatoes of our podcast tonight, Caleb, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your podcast, Woo Pig Weekly, and tell us a little bit about your fandom and how you got into college football.
Yeah, so I run the Woo Pig Weekly podcast. We're a podcast that talks all things Arkansas sports, from your normal big three sports of football, basketball, baseball, to even soccer, softball, some of the other sports. And as far as a fandom, grew up an Arkansas kid from as a kid, grew up watching the Razorbacks, attended university throughout my college days, graduated in 2017, season ticket holder, try to go to all the football games. It's just, if you say in my DNA.
What is your first memory as a Razorbacks fan?
I think for me, the one that stands out the most is my first Razorback game in Little Rock, whenever we had end zone seats, and it was seeing legendary running back Darren McFadden score a touchdown in the end zone right in front of me. It was incredible, and I think that was one of my first big memories as far as being at a big game, just live in person, and really got me hooked to the sport and the Razorbacks.
That sounds so awesome. Darren McFadden was electric. I remember I always considered it smash and dash with Felix Jones. They were kind of both dash and smash at the same time. Those guys were really, really excellent football players. Brandon, similar question to you. What got you into college football, and how did you get to this point in your life?
So college football wise, it's always been there. I've been a football fan for years. It's just kind of happened over the last couple I would say years. The excitement around college football has brought me into it, I guess, a little bit more than I used to be. Don't necessarily have a team. I just enjoy watching football. So, I'm not like, full on go ACC, full on go, any team like that. It's just, hey, it's football. I want to watch football, so I'm going to watch football. But yeah,
and I bet you that keeps you more level-headed than some of us fans, as you can see behind me, and obviously Caleb, who's got probably a little bit of that SEC bias people talk about. Okay, so now that we got a little bit of background on you guys, a little bit of background on me, I'm an Ohio State fan. Earliest memory, I was probably 10 or 11 years old. I really started getting into the football games the year Ohio State beat Miami. Obviously, there's some controversy that went on, but that's one of my first seasons that I can really remember all the way through. And obviously, it ended in a national championship, and I just was pretty much hooked on the sport ever since. Always enjoyed playing in the backyard with my friends. Always was, Chris Gamble or Maurice Claret through the years, just in my head being those guys. Really enjoyed the game. So that's a little bit about me. Let's transition, guys, into how do you guys see this season shaking out? I want your guys' 4 playoff teams, and then I want one dark horse that you guys think could maybe come out of left field and make a run at the college football playoff. Caleb, let's start with you. Is your bias going to show right away, or are you going to pick with your head?
I think there's going to be a little bit of both there. You got to me, in mind, the first team that I got to start with is Georgia. They've got a really solid program built there right now. Kirby Smart is one of the few, I guess, Saban prodigies that have came off coached under him and has had really success at a high level, just as Saban has, coming off of another, really fantastic year. It's tough to see anybody really stepping up with that incredible defense they've been able to put together year after year. Another team I will say is right up there is probably that team you've got right behind you, Ohio State. They're another team outside the SEC that is competitive year in and year out. And then I'll have to say probably a Michigan team that I think could be very competitive this year. We got to see some showing out of their wide receiver core this year, and along with the returning, Blake Corum is going to be big for them coming back. And then, another team you never can count out, Clemson. That's another team that I think could see a chance back at the playoffs. And then dark horse wise, I'd probably say you've got to look at the success LSU's had over their first year under Brian Kelly and what they're going to build upon from last season. And I think that's where you got to go.
4 very strong picks to start. And LSU, I think, like you said, really building something with the talent they've got down there on both ends of on both sides of the ball. Very strong dark horse selection from you. Brandon, same question. Do you got anybody different than Caleb's got on his?
So outside of our, the top, teams in college football, Georgia, what else is there's Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. If I had a dark horse, I'm gonna go with the team out of the Pac, I guess 9 now, Pac 8. I'm gonna go Washington. It was a team that finished 11-2 last year, who should give USC a little bit of a run for the Pac-12. I guess it's still Pac-12 for this year. But I think Washington could find their way and sneak themselves into one of the Final Four spots in the college football playoffs this year. Should be a solid team. The Huskies.
I actually hate you for that because that was going to be my dark horse. I think Penix Jr. and those receivers are very strong on offense. They've got a solid run game. I think, like you said, they should be able to challenge USC.
Yeah.
My 4 picks before my dark horse are Georgia, OSU, USC, and Alabama.
Yeah.
And then if I had to pick a separate dark horse, since you took Washington, I don't think Clemson's necessarily a dark horse. When you've won a national championship, you don't really come out of nowhere on people. But the ACC sets up for them really well. And unless Florida State's back, which is always a massive question mark, they've got talent all the time, but do they put it together? I would say Clemson getting back into the college football playoff as my dark horse is where I would lean. Go ahead.
Florida State was one that I've, you kind of have to keep in the back of your mind a little bit because they should. It's from, like you said, from the sounds of it, they've rostered up some and they've got some dudes that are going to compete for a college, for a playoff spot this year. From the sounds of it.
Yeah, Caleb. Anybody else come to mind that you think could surprise some people?
I think you mentioned it with Washington. I think they've got that returning there that you could see some surprise there, and then you can't count out Caleb Williams and USC. I think that's a team that can be very competitive out on the West Coast. So I think there could be some surprises off of just what you normally expect to see, just based off the past few years of the college football with your typical 1 to 2 SEC teams and your either ACC team or whatever it may be.
Yeah, totally with you on that. Now that we've discussed our top 4, top 5 teams going forward for the college football playoff, let's jump into college football's most prestigious individual award. Brandon, who do you think is going to come away with the Heisman Trophy this season?
It's hard not to say Caleb Williams again. Just because there's outside of him, maybe JJ McCarthy. Yeah,
if he can put together a solid on the ground and with his arm, that's not a bad pick at all.
Other than that, I think it's going to come down to those 2 guys, and there's always somebody who's going to come in and be that kind of like sleeper guy or sleeper, kind of runner, Heisman runner that'll come in and surprise everybody. But I would imagine it's going to come down to Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy.
Okay, same question to you, Caleb.
Yeah, like Brandon said, it's hard to not just throw Caleb Williams up there automatically. But another guy that I think could be up there is, Blake Corum at Michigan. Fantastic running back last year. If he can put together a great year this year, I think that's somebody that you could see up there as well. I think the Heisman Award has really kind of transitioned more towards from what it used to be to a very almost seems like quarterback centric award.
Yeah.
Where it's hard for guys like running backs to be up there as much as they used to be in the past. Another guy I want to throw out there, kind of being a little biased here, is I feel like don't overlook KJ Jefferson and what he can do as an experienced player in the SEC, a top returning player. And I think he's a guy, I'll propose this question to you guys, is to me that I've talked about on my show, is you take KJ Jefferson, put him in, say, a Georgia uniform, an Alabama uniform. I think he's an instant Heisman contender right away. But since he plays at Arkansas, not as, had the amount of success that Georgia and Alabama has, he's flying under the radar.
Here's what I was gonna do. I was gonna say if you didn't say KJ Jefferson, I was gonna bring him up because the guy puts up numbers and he can do it with the legs and he can do it with the arm and he gets those rushing touchdowns and the throwing touchdowns. I think he's a dark horse candidate right there. And I think dark horse might even be underselling it. He's going to have a really big year. I think because you guys named quarterbacks, I'm going to go a little bit off the grid here. I'm going to say Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think there's nobody who can guard him. There's nobody who can stop him. And Ohio State's going to have to throw the ball a lot, in my opinion, this year. I think Marvin Harrison is an outside shot, but I like his chances. And if I couldn't pick Marvin Harrison Jr., I think Caleb Williams is the first one to repeat since Archie Griffin. They're just going to put up godly numbers out there in the Pac 8.5 now because Arizona might be going to the Big 12. So
Arizona,
depending
Washington,
on how you want to take that down. I think Penix Jr. also is going to have his name in the hat because he puts up a lot of passing yards and a lot of touchdowns. So there's a couple guys in there that really, really have a shot at Heisman this season. Let's transition into something I've been wondering about you both. Caleb, because you are in SEC country. Brandon, you're obviously a little more central.
I'm in the middle.
We should have different answers here. What are your guys' top 5 stadiums in college football? Caleb, lead us off with your top 5.
I mean, for me, going back to that bias, I think, Razorback Stadium is a big place to play. I think they've said that with several players have mentioned that it gets crazy loud there. When it is a crazy big game environment, I think it gets loud, and I think that's when you've got to throw up there. Another one to me that is, I think, a legendary place to play is you can't forget about Death Valley and LSU, especially at night. That is a tough place to play. Just from watching Arkansas and LSU games there and other games, it is a very tough place to play as far as SEC-wise. And, I mean, it's just that environment is hard to get past. Another place that I've experienced personally back, right when they were, in their peak of playing well is – surprisingly Mississippi State. People talk about the cowbells often, but you don't really know what it's like until you're there in person and you actually hear them, the entire stadium full of cowbells just ringing at one time. It's really crazy. And then going kind of probably outside the SEC, I would probably have to say a place like
that was to your Mississippi State comment.
Yeah, and another place I'd probably have to say is go out on the West Coast. A historic traditional program is USC. I think that's a top tier place that you've got to consider as well. That there's been a lot of history behind that program. Reggie Bush, years ago, one of the former Heisman winner, kind of questionable there. But and then if you go on the other side, you got to look at places like another SEC school, the Swamp down in Florida. That's been a place that also has, been said to be a tough place to play in as well.
Very good selections. A lot of really tough places to play. Brandon, let's get your 5.
Yeah, so I think my first one, my number one, it's probably going to surprise you a little bit. I'm going to go with the Virginia out in Virginia Tech.
Oh yeah,
With the Hokies. Their whole intro with the Metallica song is it?
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the name of the song right now.
Enter Sandman.
Enter Sandman. That environment right away. That's exciting from the get go. Number two, I think it would be the Big House in Michigan. I think it'd be a cool place to play. There's been a lot of awesome, there's been a lot of great players to go through there. Another one that I think of, number three, would be Notre Dame.
Yeah,
I know you probably hate hearing Notre Dame, but it seems like it'd be a cool place to go to as well, and to be a part of. Number four, I agree with the USC UCLA kind of
Rose Bowl.
The Rose Bowl out there. That would be a pretty solid place to play to, just because of the history and everything involved in it or with it, and the amount of players that have come through there. And then at number five, I think I want to go with Texas.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to go Texas. It seems like it'd be a cool place to play and to be at. Not dogging any SEC schools, because Florida, you have Florida, LSU. LSU seems like it'd be a cool place to go to as well. It makes it tough. There's a lot of really, really good choices there that you can choose from. I mean, even places like Kansas State that you can, places. Kansas State. There's a. I don't think they're not Division III, or they're right below, but the Jackrabbits. Is it South Dakota State? Yeah. And then there's Idaho. The Idaho Vandals Stadium seems like it'd be pretty cool to hang out and play in.
Yeah, no, those are I like the off the cut, off
more than five
type ones. I like those. Yeah. I think those are really great. Mine's going to be a little more Midwesty. Yeah. Obviously the shoe. I mean, it's really hard to beat the shoe on a Saturday night. I think Beaver Stadium, Penn State, a whiteout, really, really iconic. LSU at night, Death Valley. And then, let's see, the Swamp, I have to give them some love. And I also think a fun place to play, like Vandy Chris just said, right off the bat, Boise State on the blue turf. I think that right there is just, like, it would be sweet to play there one time, just to, like, does the ball look different? Does the players look different matching in with that turf? I think that's a really spectacular place to play, and it always pops really well on TV.
Yeah.
Just there's, like you guys said, there's so many awesome venues in college sports, and that leads us into this. If you guys need tickets to visit your favorite stadium, visit SeatGeek. Promo code VSN for $20 off your first ticket purchase.
Nope.
What?
Gosh dang it.
What did I say?
That way.
Oh, it's up in the corner. Sorry.
It's up in the corner.
That is promo code VSN for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Yep. So go and visit those guys. Get yourself a ticket for college football. It's literally right around the corner. And then next on the agenda, guys, we've talked about a lot of fun stuff. Let's talk about something that's not as fun anymore. To me, conference realignment is a issue. I think it's an issue. I appreciated when teams were matched up geographically. Caleb, what is your take on the whole idea of super conferences, conference realignment, California teams playing in the Midwest? It's a lot to cover, but go ahead and let me know what you think.
I think it's something that you've got to really look at. That it's a little bit crazy, just like the way, you go from having all these conferences in college football to, like you said, essentially you're getting into super conferences where you're going to have really, it seems like maybe 3 or 4 conferences that are going to, be really competitive year in, and then you're going to have these kind of, I guess, outliers that are going to be kind of those teams that were left over when some teams left and went to these super conferences. I mean, just looking at, like, as an example, for Texas and Oklahoma coming over to the SEC next year, they're leaving the Big 12, coming over and a conference where both of them have had success in and year out, coming over to the SEC where not in necessarily a bad way, but could struggle with those first few years because the type of football played in those two different conferences is different. It's a different mentality, different style of football that's played. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, especially, like the news with, especially you see next year, Colorado leaving, that conference and coming over to a bigger conference. And then the mentions of Arizona potentially leaving the Pac-12. I think it's just something that I think it's inevitable, and I think is heavily driven, especially on college deals. And you see a lot of that when the NIL deals as well, more money for these big conferences that they can bring in with the big name schools.
Let me ask you a question, Caleb. What team has been the biggest head scratcher for you in terms of realigning to a new conference?
Cool.
Colorado, I understand, is going to bring in a lot of money.
Yeah.
They have not produced a good product in football in a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that Deion's there now and the money signs are different, but it's still going to take them time to be a good football team. And like you mentioned, Oklahoma and Texas, year one, those guys might get their asses kicked, to be straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, if one of them gets matched up with Georgia or Alabama right away or LSU, that's going to be rough. So tell me who you think has been one of the biggest head scratchers for you in terms of leaving.
I think as far as leaving, like you have to really think about, like you mentioned, if you think about Colorado, they haven't really been good. I think there's a lot of hype around just that name of Deion Sanders. Yes, great NFL player, fantastic. Had some success at Jackson State. But once you come up to that really competitive Division, one college football, is he going to have that same type of success? And if he doesn't, what is that going to look like that you've already kind of made this deal to leave and come over the new conference? And he hasn't even coached a full season of college football at Colorado yet. So I think that's one thing that has been interested for me as far as to look at, as that was surprising. Maybe, not as surprising if you give him a year or two and he's had two really good winning seasons with bowl games and getting bowl game wins, but not even a year in and they're already looking to go up to, a different conference.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Brandon, conference realignment, and then give us a head scratcher for you in terms of where teams have realigned. Is there anything you like about conference realignment?
Right now, no.
Okay.
Just because I don't. It's not that I don't like realignment. I get why Colorado wants to go to the Big 10 or Big 12. That has a lot to do with it. And I understand, like, teams in the Pac-12 right now, you look at the TV deals, and that's literally what all this is about. It's about the TV deals and how much money the schools are making, which is why you see Texas and Oklahoma jump into the SEC because of their TV deals with ESPN and all that there. Some schools don't make any sense why they want to jump. Like, to be honest, I don't know if Cincinnati is really ready for Big 12 football. I don't know if Houston's ready for Big 12 football. Yeah. They've been good, but are they ready to take that next step to get there? It's probably going to take them, like Caleb said, a couple of years to get around to being competitive with these teams that are in the Big 12 already. Yeah. The ones that made no sense to me was USC and UCLA to the Big 10.
You don't like it. You don't like the geographics of it.
It just doesn't make any sense. Even though you're going to get more TV money, you're going to spend twice as much money flying your guys to Maryland, flying your guys to Rutgers, flying your guys to Indiana, to Purdue, to Illinois. Yeah. It doesn't. That one doesn't make any sense. They should have hung around a little bit longer in the Pac-12 and waited till, because it's going to happen with Mountain West and the Pac-12. They're going to merge. Yeah. I imagine they're going to merge. I don't see how they don't at this point.
Well, let me post a counter to you on this one.
Yeah.
I don't mind those as much because I think the Pac-12 has done such a poor
You're
job
right.
negotiating TV contracts.
Yeah.
And the Big Ten travel is going to be expensive, but that Big Ten contract in terms of TV is massive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and Pac-12 and USC is going to get a big cut of that because you can't tell me that the Ohio State USC game isn't going to do insane numbers. The USC Michigan game is going to do insane numbers.
Mm-hmm.
UCLA, not as much as USC, just because. But in basketball, that's going to be a big game for a lot of teams. Is going out to play UCLA. So I wanted to ask because obviously we're not as much as into basketball, but a lot of this is going to be a lot of travel on these kids too during the season. Now the whole travel schedule has changed in terms for these college kids. Do you think that's going to affect anybody, the actual travel and being away from college as much? Because I think that could be an issue, but obviously flights are much different now, so you get back a lot faster.
Right. Well, yeah, and they all have private jets now. They're not like flying through, they're not flying out of LAX anymore.
Right.
They're flying from. I mean, they're probably flying out of LAX, but they don't have to go through all the security stuff and all the security checkpoints like, most people would have to. They're hopping on their plane anymore and flying straight to where they need to go. I don't think it's gonna affect that side of things. Maybe later in the year when they're having to go from, and I hope what happens is that they schedule this out right, and they're not having to go from LA, like with UCLA and USC, they're not having to go from LA to Rutgers, back to LA for a game, back to Maryland, and then back. It's just that back and forth. It could. I mean, with the jet lag, that's a lot and a little bit of time to be going basically cross country on a plane to play football.
Yeah, that's true. Caleb, one more question for you. Let's try to view this in a positive light. Is there a team out there that you would like to see the SEC pick up?
Looking at it right off the top of my head, it's really tough. I think, if you think geographical, I mean, we've got teams, from really our geographical region, and really there's not really a team out there that I could say go get right now that could really just have an improvement on the conference, right away, as far as, big games. Then, like, there's going to be some big games with Texas that come in. If they weren't already coming over, that's probably one I would have to say would be Texas, just because you have those classic Southwest Conference rivalries from back, in the day whenever they played these schools. Like, Arkansas, Texas used to be a huge game, and so I think that would be the team I'd have to say if they weren't already coming over.
Okay. First team that came to mind for you guys, to me, was Clemson. You don't think Clemson could come in right away and be competitive? I don't think they could. I don't think they would hold up as well. It would take some time, but in terms of dollars and cents, that's marquee games right there, right away for some of the SEC. Do you not think Clemson could fit in down there?
That's a team that, kind of didn't necessarily cross that sin of my mind, just because you've already got, South Carolina in, and I know we've already have multiple state teams within the conference. You see both Mississippi schools, things like that. So that is a team that I didn't necessarily think about right offhand that could come over and, like you said, maybe not have super success right away. It would take some transition period to this type of football. But I think, as far as, like you said, where it's all going with money, that could have some marquee matchups, and for those to be considered, if they came over the SEC, marquee matchup conference, battles between schools, where they would probably play Alabama, Georgia more frequently since they were in the conference. I think that could have a chance to be some, a potential there as well.
Okay. Last question about conference realignment for you guys. With conference realignment, do you believe that divisions should be realigned also to help balance out with new incoming teams? So just for an example, the Big Ten East and West, Michigan, should we realign those to be more even, put USC and Ohio State on one side, and then Michigan and everybody else on the other to make it, or switch it out, Michigan and USC on one side to make it. In general, with all these big power teams, I think they got to try to balance out each side of the divisions a little bit better going forward. Do you think that's going to happen also? Caleb, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the divisions and having like your East, your West, your different things like that, and we're seeing the SEC kind of next season kind of go away from having two separate divisions and a kind of just one big conference that's going to be, one through whatever. I personally prefer you get to see, your divisions within your conference where you have your divisional games, but then you play 1 to 2 teams from the other side of the division.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would be for that. So, but I think the way things are going in these conferences are going to get so big, it's going to be very hard to make them equal out and be very even as far as competition wise goes.
Okay. Brandon, same question to you. Do you think the division should realign also with the conference, or do you think we should just get rid of the divisions because they're getting so big that it's hard to keep it straight?
I think if you could get rid of divisions and just make it like, this is your 8-game, 9-game, 10-game conference schedule. And you might have to rotate 1 or 2 teams out every year, but you keep that on that rotation so it doesn't go away. I know that's how you look at high school football. It's kind of put out that way. I mean, like here in Missouri, we play regional teams, but then like our district stuff is set up completely different. So we might have to travel an hour away to play a team, and whatnot. But I think you could get rid of the divisions.
Okay.
I don't see why. I don't see you're bringing in teams like for the Big 12 or Big 10, for example. You're bringing in UCLA and USC. It doesn't make sense to have them in a division with Maryland and Rutgers.
So, I get you.
And to the one question that you asked, Caleb, about who you would add to the SEC, I'd add North Carolina.
You think North Carolina would leave the ACC?
Don't think they would.
The reason I didn't say North Carolina is because I don't think they would leave for basketball reasons.
That's the reason why I think they could leave, is because then they'd have that Kentucky UNC game every year as well, even though most of the time they do. But it would be for sure every year. And Alabama's getting good basketball. There's a lot of competition in the USC, but I don't see them. But it's just a team that I thought that could possibly move.
That's interesting, but I just I'd be so confused if we didn't get North Carolina and Duke every year in basketball.
Right.
So I don't mind it. I just think Clemson would be the first choice for
Clemson or Florida State.
Places. Florida State also, but they've got to win some games.
Yeah.
I know that hurts some Florida State fans, but let's start producing on the field. Guys, that wraps up most of the podcast. Do you guys have anything else before we get out of here?
I don't have anything. Hey, if you got a chance, go grab some Variety Sports Network stuff. We have our T-shirts. We have our Saturday Showdown shirt that Doug has on right there. It helps us.
Yeah.
Helps, you help support us by getting some of the merchandise from our store over at Bonfire. It's really awesome stuff. I just got mine the other day, so I'm super excited about it. And make sure you subscribe, do all the fun stuff that you do,
right,
and whatnot for everybody else.
Also, Caleb, sorry to cut you off. I just want to say thank you to everybody who commented and helped us out during the podcast. Appreciate all the comments, the feedback that's been going on. Thank you guys for taking the time and watching the show. Caleb, what day of the week can we see Woo Pig Weekly?
So you can catch that either most Wednesdays or Thursdays. Episode's going to be dropping tonight. As soon as we jump off here, I'm going to finish up my editing and get that put out tonight. So you can go catch that out. And we post once a week, shoot for that. And, catch us on Twitter, or now as it's called, I guess, X. And so go check us out.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. Like and subscribe to Variety Sports Network. We will be back next Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Hey, this is Brandon, CEO of the Variety Sports Network. Thank you again for watching tonight's show. Best way you can support us is by hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and hitting the notifications so you don't miss out on